Good evening. For tonight's briefing, we're joined by a number of commissioners of the Governor's Cabinet, including Darrell Towns. Darrell is the Commissioner of the New York State Department of Homes and Community Renewal. We're joined by Ben Lawsky, who is the Superintendent of the Department of Financial Services. He's here along with George Haggerty, the Executive Deputy Superintendent of the Department, Joe Lota, the Chairman and CEO of the MTA, and Governor Cuomo. We had a very active day today, working on power, transportation restoration, and also moving very actively into the area of humanitarian assistance. And the Governor has some additional updates tonight.
Thank you very much, Howard. As we've discussed, we're going to have a multi-pronged plan that is going to go on for months, right? So we're going to go from the recovery to the restoration phase. But we want to keep people informed, especially during this initial period where it's intense and things are changing all the time and people have a lot of questions. First, for the train update, as we've said all along, the progress is happening literally on an hourly basis, and the progress has been amazingly advanced for what we originally anticipated. On the Long Island Railroad, the Babylon and Huntington Long Island Railroad lines will reopen for hourly service to Penn Station tomorrow morning. On Metro North, the Hudson Line will reopen from Grand Central to Croton Harmon on a regular schedule tomorrow morning. The Harlem Line reopens tonight with full service from Grand Central to Southeast. On the subways, the 7 line will reopen at midnight tonight between Main Street and 74th Street. The M line is reopening tonight with limited service from Jamaica, Queens to Midtown Manhattan. The East River tunnels that carry the 4, 5, and F trains are now free of water. The tracks are dry. The signal testing has been completed. Service can be restored within 2 hours of restoration of power by Con Ed. I've spoken today with Con Ed CEO Kevin Burke about the urgency of restoring power to these lines, which would permit significant restoration of the system. You can see the interconnection between the restoration of power and the restoration of the lines. One is now linked to the other. Also, one tube of the Holland Tunnel will be open tomorrow morning for buses only. Buses only, one tube of the Holland Tunnel. So leave the car at home and take the bus. That is our message over and over and over again. Help yourself and help the city with the traffic and the gridlock. On the power update, there are a number of utility companies that are involved in providing power throughout the affected areas. You have Con Edison, you have LIPA, etc. You have a number of others. I believe most companies are working very, very hard to restore the power and are deploying their workers and doing it very well. I believe that. I've had a number of conversations with the companies themselves, and we've gone through schedules, and I believe they're working very hard. I also believe that I want them to understand how important a function this is. This is not just restoration of power, which is important at any time. This is a restoration of power after a storm when families are really living in hardship. The state regulates the public utilities. The state certifies the public utilities. Their performance in this operation, I believe, is germane to their regulatory status. If the state believes they were not diligent and aggressive in their activities to restore power, they could be subject to monetary penalties. They could even lose their certification. I have communicated this orally to most, and we are also releasing a letter that I sent them today. I believe, as I said, most of the companies are working very hard and trying their best. But this is not just about effort and good faith effort. This is about getting the job done because a lot of New Yorkers are relying on them. If they want to be a utility in the state, if they want consumers to pay the bill, if they want to be licensed by the state, certified by the state, they have to perform, and we want performance, and it's very important. Next point, given the storm, certain products and services are in short supply. We've been talking about the gasoline shortage, but it's not just gasoline because transportation has been difficult. Transportation services are in short supply. That could create conditions of price gouging. I've spoken to Attorney General Eric Schneiderman. I asked him to monitor the situation for price gouging, gasoline, transportation systems, other consumer products, and the Attorney General has agreed. So to all the vendors, to all the businesses, 99.9% of whom have been helpful and cooperative in this time of need for New Yorkers, do not try to gouge New Yorkers. And don't try to take advantage of New Yorkers because of the difficulty of the situation. Price gouging, there are price gouging laws on the books. The Attorney General is investigating and will enforce them. Next phase of reconstruction, once we stabilize the situation, which is happening rapidly, the next phase of reconstruction will be reconstructing small businesses and homes. There will be three potential sources of funding for small business restoration or home restoration. The first is going to be private insurance for people who had private insurance on their home, flood insurance, fire insurance, general home ownership policy. The second will be a potential of federal funds through the FEMA agency. The third potential source could be funding from the state through one of the state's housing programs. So there'll be three potential avenues to pursue. This can get very complicated very quickly. This can generate a lot of bureaucracy very quickly. You have New Yorkers who are in a difficult situation. The last thing we now want to do is subject them to some labyrinth of bureaucracy and forms and paper. What we're going to do is put together expert teams from the state government who are well briefed in private insurance, the federal programs from federal officials, and the state's home ownership programs. We will start tomorrow morning a 1-800 line, numbers 1-855 NYS Sandy, 1-855 NYS Sandy, New York State Sandy. It's an 855 number, but it's a toll-free number. If you call that number tomorrow, you will get an expert on the phone who can talk to you about you can explain your situation, they can give you advice, they can point you in the right direction, and they can start you on the road to applying for the proper funds, or applying to your own insurance company and being your advocate vis-a-vis your insurance company. Next week, next Monday, we will make these teams mobile and send them to your community, and we'll have a schedule of community visits so the government people will actually come to you rather than you trying to find them. We'll start this 1-800 number tomorrow just as an interim measure. Next week we'll have a full schedule of when they're going to be in a community near you. The FEMA funding, even if you don't have private insurance, the FEMA funding can be helpful. We have with us today the superintendent of the Department of Financial Services, Ben Lawsky, who can be helpful as an advocate vis-a-vis your insurance company, so we actually think we can make a difference here. Last point is this: we talk of systems. We've been talking about systems a lot. We talk about the train system, we talk about the water system, we talk about the power system, and that's very important that we get those systems up and running. But at the end of the day, New York is not a collection of systems. New York is a community of people. And right now we are a community of people that needs to support one another and needs help and needs comfort and needs assistance, because you have a lot of people who are in undergoing very difficult circumstances. And I have one simple suggestion that I would ask all New Yorkers, which is just check on your neighbor. Check on your neighbor to your left, check on your neighbor to your right, and make sure your neighbor doesn't need any help. If you know there's a person down the hall a senior citizen down the hall, if you know there's a family who might need help down the hall, walk down the hall, knock on the door, and say, is there anything I can do? You know, you have people who have been in high-rise buildings that have not had power for a number of days. They haven't had water. Many people can't walk down from a high floor, can't walk down from the 20th floor to go to the supermarket. Let's help one another. It's what's always made us special. That's what makes the community of New York special. And this is the time to do it. This is the time to take that little extra step. And New Yorkers feel that innately. But now is the time to do that. We have 1 million meals that have come to us from the federal government that are being distributed by our National Guard. You'll see them on the streets. Let's just make sure people who need that help are getting that help. And there's no way better to do it than just having the community of New York help itself. With that, I will turn it over to Joe Loder for any further details.
Okay. Thank you, Governor. I will be very brief. The Governor outlined all of the additional services that we added some today. We'll be adding more tomorrow. It's our goal to continue to add every day so that we can get back to a full and complete system. If you go online to mta.info, you'll see the full service alert, what's available on the subway system. We also have these alerts available with the full track schedules for both Metro North and the Long Island Railroad. One thing I would like to say, talking about the community of people, I want to thank the transit workers, the bus drivers, the railroad workers, the bridge and tunnel workers for what they've been doing over the last couple of days. They've left home, were here during the storm, and have been working diligently on behalf of the people of New York to get our system up and running. And I can't thank them enough. It's been a great effort on their part, and we'll continue that effort. Thank you.
Any questions?
Just to follow up on the power situation or lack of power, what has been the impact and where of the power situation and in terms of the restoration of service?
You know, Carl, everybody's making progress everywhere. Long Island probably had the greatest problem by percentage. Close to 90% of the homes on Long Island were without power. Westchester was probably the best by percentage, or had the least problem, let's say, by percentage. Con Ed was somewhere in the middle. So they are all making progress steadily. You see lights going on, and the progress has been good. My point is, it doesn't give someone a lot of comfort to say progress has been good. You know, this is a binary question for people. I have power, or I don't have power. And it's not all that relevant that the rate of progress is good if my lights are off and I can't use my refrigerator. So that's the point. The utility companies are talking about rates of progress, and I'm talking about helping people and getting lights on for people. I believe most of the companies are doing everything they can do. I believe that. But I want to make sure that they are. And the state is a regulatory body. You know, we don't do business with a utility company on a handshake. There are rules and regulations, and they have to live up to them. They have a license from the state that allows them to make money, right, at the end of the day. They want that franchise. They have to perform, and this is going to be a test of their performance, and I want them to know that. And I think they do now.
Can you elaborate on the situation, particularly with the city subway system or the transit system in regards to that? Which lines have been impacted by the power more than others?
Do you want to answer that, sir?
Sure. Any of our lines that go south of 36th Street, 39th Street, where it's dark right now, we can't run subway service through there because without electricity, you can't light the third rail. We also, it extends to the 7 tunnels that had water in them. As the governor said, as soon as we get power in what we call a Gerolman tunnel, which is the 4 and 5 train, we'll be able to run service on the 4 and 5 train through the East River into Manhattan and connect the 4 and 5 trains all the way up to the Bronx, as well as the Rutgers tube, which has the F train. And the F train will be able to take people from Brooklyn and then straight up 6th Avenue to Rockefeller Center, turn on 57th Street, go to Roosevelt Island, and then all the way out to almost to the end of Queens. It's really important to get. We can't do it without electricity. We need that third rail lit. And those 2 tubes, we have a couple of others that'll be coming on, we'll be able to have online relatively soon. At least these 2 tubes that we can open up, we'll have 2 hours. Within 2 hours, the train service will be ready to go. In doing that, we'll be able to reduce what we call the bus bridge. By reducing the bus bridge, which we started this morning, where folks from Brooklyn had to terminate at 3 different stops and then take the buses into Manhattan. Worked really well. There was some traffic problems in downtown Brooklyn. If you heard this morning, they spoke to the folks at the city and they created a dedicated lane, and then the buses moved very, very quickly.
Carl, this was always the interconnection of 3 elements, right? We needed to get the water out of the tunnels, to turn the power back on in the tunnels so the train could run. And that's the constant dance that we're doing here, Pete.
So the 7 and the M come back tonight at midnight, correct? And then are there more?
The M is up now.
The M is up now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you expect more lines tomorrow? Did you say they'll come back?
There's the 7, the main to 74th Street, which will connect in, and then it'll allow folks the Myrtle Avenue shuttle on the M train, as well as the M from Jamaica all the way down to 34th Street will be put on. That's actually up and running now. We've been spending a lot of time, Pete, on the tunnels. We're ready. We just need to get the juice back in there, and we can run them.
So the 7's it's going to go from Flushing to Maine.
It's going to go from
Main to,
right,
yes.
Right. And there it connects to another, some other line. Which one? And then it can take everybody right into the city and right down 6th Avenue.
Laura?
Can you tell us anything about damage to the PATH trains and when that service might be restored?
We have the PATH tubes were, I don't know if you went down there with us, Laura. There was water flooded. The PATH tubes were flooded. The water was up to the platform. And we believe the water goes all the way back to New Jersey from the New York side, which means you have about 5 miles of the tube filled with water. And that's, as I was just saying to Carl, that starts, first you have to get the water out of the tunnel, and that's an engineering exercise like we haven't seen before. That's the Army Corps of Engineers that's bringing in pumps. We have private contractors with pumps. We are now pumping those tunnels as we speak. I was just at the Ground Zero site, and they're making good progress, but they're not done yet. Once the water is out, then we can talk about restoring power and then the trains. Incidentally, the work will recommence at the Ground Zero site tonight. I was just congratulating some of the workers. There was tremendous flooding on the Ground Zero site. We went from seeing the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel turn into a flume to walking up to the Ground Zero site where water was cascading into the site from every imaginable angle. At such a decibel level, it was disorienting. So the entire site was flooded. They originally anticipated it would be about 2 to 3 weeks before they could get back to work, because they're still working on the buildings, obviously. And actually, instead of 2 to 3 weeks, they've gotten it done in about 3 or 4 days. And the work will recommence tonight on the site, and you'll see lights on the site again. That site has generator power, but they're going to be working, so they're going to be turning on the lights. Obviously, you can't work if you don't turn on the lights. And you'll see the Ground Zero site will be illuminated tonight once again. New York goes back to work.
Good evening, Governor. Brett Marker from WPIX. Do you think the New York City Marathon should be running?
I think that is I understand the issue on both sides. I think it's an issue that should be left to the local officials, and that's what I'm doing.
Well, you were there, and you saw the destruction and the devastation. How can people be running across the bridge when there's still people missing there, and when houses are underwater?
Yeah, well, it's going to be a decision that needs to be made by the NYPD and the public safety officers of the city and the mayor, and I'll leave it to them.
I think we said only a little bit about the gasoline situation. Real problems at M1 Island, other than Westchester. Gas stations are running out of gas in Westchester now. When are the solutions going to catch up with the problems in terms of gas stations?
Hopefully very shortly. What happened was I spoke to the Coast Guard this morning about it. they closed the New York Harbor for a period of time to make sure the navigational channels were free and clear. There was a fear that things had fallen into the harbor, fallen into the water during the storm, and they could be an obstruction that was slightly underwater, and that there could be an accident with a tanker or a barge, etc. So the Coast Guard took time to make sure the channel in the harbor was clear. This morning, they cleared it. They started allowing access again. There was a queue of barges that were lined up. Many of them had fuel. Those barges started leaving the harbor this morning. As I said, there's a queue, so I don't know that they all left by now. But they started leaving this morning, and that should make the situation much better. When does the barge get from the harbor to Westchester? I don't know, but I can't imagine that it's that long.
One more.
Governor, with all that's happened, can we expect transit funding to be preserved?
I would say so. Not that Joe can write blank checks here. Because the budget is tight. The budget is tight. Sir?
There's been a lot of talk about redesign. You just mentioned the systems within the city infrastructure issues. Are we looking at small things like new subway grates, or is this bigger stuff like in Holland, with CDA systems that protect the whole harbor? What do you envision?
I think we have to look at bigger things. My own opinion. We were at the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel today showing Secretary Janet Napolitano one of the challenges we face of pumping out the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, a mile of water in the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. I was talking at that time about the expression, your greatest strength can be your greatest weakness, normally about a personality. It's also true for a city. Your greatest strength can be your greatest weakness. The greatest strength of New York City and New York State was we were near the water. We were a great port. That's what made New York, right? New York Harbor, Hudson River, Erie Canal, opened up the West. That's the story of New York. The water made New York. That's our greatest strength. Manhattan, what made Manhattan? Your engineering marvel. You took a little sliver of land and you built all these magnificent buildings on this little sliver of land. Why? Because you could build on top and up, and you built below. You built 15, 20, 30 stories below the surface. Water pipes, subways, conduits, this whole honeycomb of construction below ground. Great strength. Until the greatest strength turns into your greatest weakness, until the water comes over the bank. And then the water fills that honeycomb underneath and fills the infrastructure and fills the subway tunnel and the Con Ed vault and the foundations in Ground Zero. Now you have a problem. I do not believe these extreme weather patterns are going to change. I don't believe anymore that this is once in a lifetime or once in 100 years or once in a generation or just a fluke. I don't accept anymore, well, don't worry about it, it's never going to happen again. That was it, it happened. What a 1 in a million, it'll never happen again. It's happening more and more with more and more frequency. And this is just statistics and probability. You look at the number of devastating floods, the number of devastating fires, the number of extreme weather patterns is going up. That is a fact. That is a fact. Now, you want to have a whole argument about what is the cause of it. Is it human causation? Is it a cycle in weather or in the environment? That's a discussion. But we can debate the cause. The effect is the same. I'm a governor. I'm an executive. I manage. The effect is the same. The water comes over the bank and fills the subway tunnel. That's the effect. I believe it's going to happen more and more in the future. I don't believe this is the last time. And these are very expensive, disruptive problems when they happen. And they can be devastating. And this could have been worse than it was. I believe that. And that would be a big solution.
Do you have any thoughts on what could be done in mentioning the tight budgets, how you might pay for it?
Yes, but not now, because I want the MTA to fund the entire situation. It's multiple billions of dollars, and I don't want to tell them now because they've been working very hard. They're a little cranky, so I'm going to
They're
tell them
in
after they
trouble.
sleep a little bit. Thank you all very
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks.